All right, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever it may be where you all are right now. I would love to be with you in person there in Denver, Colorado at this time, but I hope everybody's staying happy and healthy. My name is John Andrésen. I'm from the Indiana Institute on Disability and Community. I'm a PhD candidate at Indiana University Bloomington, and I'm excited today to share a little bit about some research I've been doing on the relationship between university and colleges and post-secondary education and earnings potential for individuals with cognitive disabilities. This has been a passion of mine for quite a while, and I'm hoping to share just a little bit about why this is such a big issue. As you all know, finding and retaining employment is just an absolutely frustrating pursuit for many individuals with disabilities. One of those impediments is that wage gap between those with and without disabilities. However, research has begun to indicate that in some forms of employment, these margins are beginning to disappear. In a recent US Census Bureau report looking at US employment trends, Day and Taylor found in 2019 that there are some occupations that are more 2 or 4 year degree focused, where we're seeing limited or no differences between workers with or without disabilities. It's becoming a little bit more clear that providing expanded post-secondary educational opportunities for individuals with disabilities has a potential to decrease earnings inequities experienced for individuals across the board with disabilities. We're seeing that in recent developments for individuals with intellectual disabilities, for example, with the Higher Education Opportunity Act in 2008 and the expansion of these TIPSed programs that allow students with intellectual disabilities on college campuses. Now, I know this revelation is not innovative, that individuals who go to college receive better salaries, it's long been acknowledged that post-secondary education is an avenue for increasing those personal earnings. While this is true for the population at large, researchers in higher education really unfortunately often fail to properly identify individuals with disabilities in their studies. While these campuses are increasingly accepting individuals with disabilities, the research community unfortunately continues to trail behind the practice. This is highlighted by a recent study by Leek and Stodden that examined higher education journal articles and found that only 11 of the articles, so that's only 1.2% of the articles in recent issues, had some sort of explicit focus on students with disabilities. It's apparent that future research is really necessary on this population to know what's going on and what's happening to individuals after they graduate. For many years, that lack of disability research in higher ed could be attributed to the absence of individuals with disabilities on campuses. We've seen many studies looking at how higher education employees often believe that education students with disabilities would not be worth the time or effort. However, changes really started in the 1960s with the post-secondary education inclusion movement. It began with Edward V. Roberts. He was admitted into Berkeley and successfully advocated for the supports that he needed from the California Department of Rehabilitation. He was really a pioneer for this movement, and right after his acceptance, 12 others joined suit with varying disabilities, and they applied to and were accepted into the university, and this group lived together on campus. Building upon this tremendous achievement, Mr. Roberts and his advisor were awarded grant funding by the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare and facilitated a program to improve services for students with disabilities. Since this time, advancements have continued to be made via advocacy by organizations such as APSE, and they've guided legislation such as the Americans with Disabilities Act and Section 504 of the Voc Rehabilitation Act. Now, speaking specifically of individuals with cognitive disabilities, I want to talk a little bit about this subpopulation because they're only beginning to access 2- and 4-year institutions. This is an interesting change, obviously, as many students with cognitive disabilities were and still are being actively discouraged from pursuing further higher education because of public perceptions and outdated stereotypes. However, research is beginning to show that the most disadvantaged students in higher education, and that's whether it's in terms of social backgrounds, socioeconomic status, achievements, or abilities, often are most likely the individuals to benefit from those experiences of post-secondary ed. It's becoming imperative that we as a field, as advocates, need to do a better job of studying the specific impacts of post-secondary education on the employment outcomes of individuals with disabilities, especially those with cognitive disabilities. Now, in defining cognitive disabilities, I want to take a little look at the International Classification of Functioning Disability and Health Model from the World Health Organization. This is in order to steer clear of a more strict medical model of disability. This ICF ecological framework classifies disability as a product of the interactions between an individual, the functions to be formed, and the surrounding environment. So if you think about the example of post-secondary education, disability can be considered a product of the interaction between the individual, which would be a college student, the functions to be formed, so those are the intellectually rigorous domains of higher education, and the surrounding environments. By utilizing this framework, we place more of an emphasis on the environment and functioning instead of simply relying on the strict disability categories such as, intellectual disability or Down syndrome, hopefully allowing us more increased generalizability when we do our research. Now, a few researchers have begun to study this population and the impacts of post-secondary education on their earnings potential after graduation. But unfortunately, a lot of the research has been done on specific populations within specific providers, such as voc rehab, which sometimes can provide limited generalizability to a larger majority of individuals with cognitive disabilities. Now, this issue is a little bit complex because there are a variety of national data sets, but very few which longitudinally track these individuals. Still, this research is intriguing and needs to be performed. So that's what I'm going to talk to you a little bit about today. I recently completed a study looking at just what type of people are out there with cognitive disabilities that are attending various levels of post-secondary education. So my research question was just what percent of the population of working Americans with cognitive disabilities completed these various levels of post-secondary education? So whether that be an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree, maybe even up to a master's. And I also wanted to see what are the comparative financial benefits of different levels of post-secondary education. So what can be anticipated on the earnings potential for these individuals? Now, I did this via a series of linear regressions and used a bunch of control variables to make sure that I'm controlling for age, sex, race, ethnicity, public support systems such as supplemental security, disability insurance, hours worked per week, weeks worked per year, and then finally that post-secondary education degree. The data set I used was the 2017 American Community Survey, and that returned 21,000 individuals with cognitive disabilities. So we had a broad range of individuals that we were able to look at. Now, the findings were really interesting. 47.6% of students received a high school or GED or less. So almost half of individuals with cognitive disabilities are in that range, but there are quite a few more individuals that are attending some college without receiving a degree. That was the highest group of post-secondary education, was individuals who attended some form of college, and that was 27.9, almost 28% of students went to college and did not receive a degree. And you can see in the associates and bachelors, we've got quite a few people that are attending school past that. And the anticipated economic increases that are anticipated are quite large. A student in comparison to a high school graduate or less than a high school graduate who attends some college but does not receive a certificate or degree can anticipate a 14.8% increase in their lifetime earnings. That's a vastly larger amount of earnings and can really change the lifestyle of someone. These earnings are even greater for an associate's or a bachelor's degree. And even in advanced, in a master's program, you can see almost an entire 100% jump in lifetime earnings. So these are really impactful, and really focusing on the associate's degree and bachelor's degree, I think, are really a next step for the field. So really the implications of this research is it's going to be very valuable information for families regarding the economic impact for further education. Families can hopefully use this information to make the decision whether to put up the financial backing towards further education. Additionally, I hope this provides some additional considerations to higher ed professionals regarding the importance of further education for individuals with cognitive disabilities. Public perceptions remain very tough for this population in the higher education circle, and hopefully this shows them just how valuable this is for the population. And finally, how do we ensure that those who wish to attend post-secondary education are able to attend, whether that's financially or whether that's dealing with the perceptions that the community has at large? That's really the next step that we need to push towards. So I really appreciate everybody's time today. And please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or would like to talk further. I really appreciate everybody taking some time to watch this video, and I hope you're staying happy and healthy. Thanks.